On October 22, 2022, in Abu Dhabi, a night that changed the lightweight division forever. Islam Makhachev submitted Charles Oliveira with a flawless arm triangle choke. It wasn't just a title change, it was a coronation. The rise of a new king, guided by the greatest lightweight champion in UFC history. When Khabib Nurmagomedov retired in October 2020, he left the sport with one final prediction: Islam will be champion. At that time, Makhachev was only ranked number 6. Most people still saw him as Khabib's training partner, not as a future champion. Today, Islam Makhachev is far beyond that. He's the man who broke records for most consecutive title defenses in lightweight history, built the longest active win streak in the division with 15 straight victories, and proved to the world that he might just be the most dominant 155-pound fighter the sport has ever seen. In the remote mountains of Dagestan, legends aren't born. They're forged through suffering, discipline, and a culture that treats martial arts like religion. This is a place where the history of fighting traditions spans centuries, where every family has its wrestler, where honor and strength mean more than money or fame. While the world was obsessed with one undefeated champion from this war-torn region, his childhood neighbor was quietly building something even more dangerous, a legacy that might surpass the original. The most fascinating thing is that Islam didn't just grow up in Khabib's shadow. He grew up literally next door. The same village of Burshi, the same school, the same training partners, the same father figure who coached them both. And now Islam might be better than the man who showed him the way. Dagestan is not just a geographical location. This is a forge of warriors, where extreme living conditions create extreme athletes. There are no soft options here, no easy paths. You either become strong or you don't survive. Picture this. You're 7 years old, living in one of the most remote villages in Dagestan, where the nearest city feels like a different planet. Your father grows tomatoes and works as a driver. Your mother runs a small cafe, fighting every day just to keep food on the table. This was Islam Makhachev's reality in the village of Burshi. Born the 27th of October 1991, Islam entered a world where toughness wasn't optional. This is Dagestan, where children learn to wrestle before they can properly walk, where the mountains themselves seem designed to break the weak and strengthen the strong. At 7 years old, he started training in Taekwondo under Saifullah Magomedov. But like most kids in Dagestan, he didn't stay in one discipline for long. Wrestling, sanda, combat sambo, Islam was absorbing everything, driven by something deeper than just childhood curiosity. This was hunger, hunger for knowledge, hunger to become something more than just a boy from a poor village. Islam's family had moved from the capital Makhachev to this remote village. The local kids saw him as a soft city boy, an outsider, an easy target. They teased him, provoked him, looked for weaknesses. They didn't realize they were creating a monster. Every street fight became a lesson. Every confrontation taught him something new about distance, timing, and most importantly, the mental side of combat. This wasn't organized training with rules and referees. This was raw, unfiltered violence that shaped his understanding of what real fighting looks like. Islam didn't cry, didn't complain, didn't run home. He fought, he learned, he adapted. These early years shaped not just a fighter, but a winner's mentality. The most important moment of Islam's childhood happened when he was still just a kid walking to school in Burshi. That's when he met another boy who would become more than a training partner, more than a friend, a brother who would change everything. Khabib Nurmagomedov was 3 years older, but they lived next door to each other. The same dirt roads, the same mountain backdrop, the same dreams. But Khabib had something Islam didn't. A father who was already becoming a legend in Dagestani martial arts. When Islam discovered that Khabib was training with his father, everything changed. He saw the results. He saw how Khabib looked stronger, faster, more technical than other kids. Islam gathered courage and asked if he could join their training. This moment defined his destiny. Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov wasn't just any coach. This was a man who served in the Soviet army and understood discipline at a level most people can't comprehend. He was developing a system that would produce world champions, and now he had 2 promising young boys to work with. Abdulmanap was a visionary. He understood that to dominate in MMA, you need more than just strength or technique. You need a system. He didn't just train the body, he trained the mind. He didn't just teach techniques, he taught philosophy. The training was unlike anything you'd see in a modern gym. No fancy equipment, no climate control, no safety mats. Just mountains, stones, and an old-school Soviet approach to conditioning. Morning runs at 5 a.m. regardless of weather. Wrestling on hard ground until exhaustion. Exercises with heavy stones. Swimming in ice water to harden the spirit. But Abdul-Manap's vision went beyond physical conditioning. He taught them chess to develop strategic thinking. He taught them the history of great warriors so they understood the legacy they carried. He taught them humility even when they started to dominate. He taught them that a true champion is not the one who talks the most, but the one who works the most. Islam absorbed everything. Wrestling techniques passed down through generations of Dagestani fighters, combat sambo skills that would give him an edge over every future opponent. But most importantly, he learned the mental approach that would make him virtually unbeatable. While Khabib was the star student everyone talked about, Islam was the quiet assassin, working just as hard, learning just as fast, but without the attention. This dynamic would define his entire career, always in someone's shadow, always proving he was more than just Khabib's training partner. By his teenage years, Islam was already showing the skills of a future world champion. His amateur wrestling record was impressive. He was beating grown men while still in high school. These weren't close fights. This was absolute dominance. In 2014, Islam won the Russian National Combat Sambo Championship in the 74-kilogram weight class. This wasn't just a national title. This was qualification for the World Championships, the biggest stage in the sport. Then came devastating news that almost ended everything. Doctors discovered a heart condition that required immediate treatment. The World Championships were off the table. The operation was risky. For a moment, it looked like Islam's dreams might be over before they'd really started. For most people, this would be the end. But if you know anything about Dagestani fighters, you know they don't quit. Never. Islam took this as just another test, another mountain to climb. Abdul-Manap told him words he would never forget. True strength is revealed not when everything is easy, but when everything is against you. Islam got the treatment, went through rehabilitation, and returned to training with even greater motivation. And in 2016, he won the World Combat Sambo Championship, defeating Bulgaria's Valentin Benishev in the finals. World champion. At 24 years old, Islam conquered the sport that produced some of the most dangerous fighters on the planet. One combat sambo match deserves special mention against Zabit Magomedsharipov at the Nazan Cup. For 2 rounds, these future UFC stars battled in what can only be described as a preview of Dagestani greatness. Zabit dominated the first round, his pressure relentless, his technique flawless. But Islam showed the kind of adjustments that would later make him a UFC champion. In the second round, he adapted to Zabit's speed, found answers to his attacks, started controlling the pace. The momentum completely shifted. When the judges announced the scores, Islam had won by decision. Looking back, it feels almost prophetic. 2 young Dagestanis, each destined for greatness, testing themselves against each other. By this time, mixed martial arts was exploding in popularity, and Islam was watching Khabib's early UFC career with great interest. Khabib was showing the world that the Dagestani wrestling style could dominate even the best fighters on the planet. Each of his victories opened doors for other Dagestanis. Islam started his professional MMA career in 2010. From the very beginning, it was clear this wasn't just another regional prospect. This was something special. His early fights were almost boring in their dominance. First-round submissions, technical knockouts, decision victories where opponents barely touched him. Islam was implementing everything he'd learned from Abdul-Manap, but now against professional fighters considered dangerous. By the time the UFC called in 2014, Islam had a record that was almost too perfect to believe. But more importantly, he had the endorsement of the most respected coach in Dagestan and a training partner who was becoming the most talked about fighter in the world. The UFC contract was for 4 fights, standard for prospects, but Islam wasn't thinking like a prospect. He was thinking like a future champion. His debut was scheduled for the 23rd of May 2015 at UFC 187 against Leo Kuntz. For most fighters, a UFC debut is about survival. Just don't fail. Islam had different plans. He didn't come to survive. He came to dominate. 2 minutes and 38 seconds into the second round, Kuntz tapped to a rear naked choke. Clean, technical, dominant. The kind of debut that makes UFC executives start calculating title timelines. Commentators noted his calmness, his control, his patience. This wasn't a wild fighter trying to end the fight with one strike. This was a chess master methodically building his victory, step by step, position by position. 5 months later at UFC 192, Islam faced a reality check that would have broken most prospects. Adriano Martins was supposed to be a stepping stone. 1 minute and 46 seconds into the first round, Martins knocked out Islam with one punch. A brutal, shocking knockout that made everyone reconsider their opinion about the fighter's potential. For most, this would be trauma, a psychological scar that would never heal. But what separated Islam from every other prospect was his response. Instead of making excuses or talking about lucky shots, he was fascinated by what happened. How did Martin set it up? What did he miss? What could he learn? Abdul Manap told him, "Defeat is the best teacher if you're ready to listen." Most people after defeat look for excuses. Champions look for lessons. This curiosity about failure would become one of his greatest strengths. But then came something even harder. In April 2016, Islam was scheduled to fight Drew Dober. The training camp had gone perfectly. Then, after the weigh-ins, the UFC announced Islam Makhachev failed a drug test. He tested positive for meldonium. The fight was canceled. His reputation was in tatters. This was a nightmare. After the knockout, people could say he was unlucky. But a failed drug test? This is a stigma that's almost impossible to get rid of. For Islam and his team, this was the darkest moment. But the thing is, meldonium was a medication that had been legal for years before being added to the banned list. Athletes from Eastern Europe used it for legitimate medical purposes to treat heart problems. The timing of the ban caught many fighters off guard. Islam served his suspension, accepted responsibility, and went back to work. He could have complained, could have blamed the system, but he chose a different path. The path of silent work, proving his cleanliness not with words, but with actions. 8 years later, Jeff Nowitzki, senior vice president of USADA, cleared Islam of all charges in an official statement.
"In your reputation forever. So I'm here today to say that Islam absolutely did nothing wrong. This mistake was on the anti-doping authority, not him. And very important to note that."
When Islam returned in September 2016 against Chris Wade, he looked like a completely different fighter. Gone was the young prospect who might make mistakes. This was a seasoned professional who learned from adversity and came back stronger. The following years became a masterclass in systematic improvement. Fight after fight, Islam was getting better. Not dramatically, but in subtle improvements that separate good fighters from great ones. His defense became impenetrable, his offense more varied. But his mind improved the most. January 2018, Gleison Tibau knocked out in 57 seconds. Tibau was a veteran who had tested some of the best lightweights in the world, including Khabib himself. Islam made him look like an amateur. July 2018, Cajun Johnson, submitted by armbar. 4 minutes and 43 seconds of technical dominance, where Islam controlled every second of the fight. But the fight that truly announced Islam as a title contender came in April 2019 against young Georgian prospect Arman Tsarukyan. This was Tsarukyan's UFC debut, but he was no ordinary newcomer. This kid had serious skills, serious athleticism, and absolutely no fear. For 3 rounds, he gave Islam one of the toughest fights of his career. Tsarukyan was fast, explosive, unpredictable. Islam won by unanimous decision, but more importantly, he proved he could handle elite-level pressure when the stakes were highest. By 2021, Islam had an 8-fight winning streak and was being mentioned alongside the division's elite. But he was also dealing with something every great fighter faces: the pressure of expectations. The victories became increasingly dominant. Drew Dober, submitted by arm triangle in the 3rd round. The same Dober Islam was supposed to fight in 2016. Now, 5 years later, Islam proved he was on a completely different level. Thiago Moises, rear naked choke in the 4th round. Moises was a talented Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner, but Islam beat him at his own game. Dan Hooker, submitted by Kimura in the 1st round. Hooker was a top 5 fighter in the division. Islam finished the fight so quickly that Hooker didn't even get to apply his strengths. Bobby Green, stoppage by strikes in the 1st round. This was particularly telling because Islam finished Green on the feet, showing he was no longer just a grappler. He had become a complete MMA fighter. Each victory was more dominant than the last. Islam wasn't just beating top contenders, he was finishing them in ways that made you question whether they belonged in the same octagon. Commentators started calling Islam the most dangerous contender in the division. But the ultimate test was approaching. Charles Oliveira, the most dangerous lightweight on the planet, holder of more submissions in the UFC than anyone else in history, with recent wins over Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje. Oliveira was a phenomenon. He had gone on an incredible journey from a fighter who lost repeatedly to a champion who seemed invincible. His submissions were so dangerous that even the best grapplers feared going to the ground with him. When the UFC announced Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira for the vacant lightweight championship at UFC 280 inches, Abu Dhabi, it felt like destiny. Two grapplers with completely different styles. Oliveira, the submission artist who overcame every obstacle life threw at him. Islam, the methodical wrestler who had been preparing for this moment his entire life. The 22nd of October 2022, Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi. The atmosphere was electric. Thousands of fans from Dagestan, Russia, Arab countries created a wall of sound that shook the arena. In the corner sat Khabib, no longer champion but mentor, watching his childhood friend chase the same dream he had already achieved. For Khabib, this was a special moment. He retired undefeated, but always said his biggest dream wasn't his own fame, but seeing his team, his brothers, reach the same height. And now, looking at Islam, he saw that dream come true. The first round was competitive. Oliveira was dangerous on the feet, his movements fluid and unpredictable. He threatened with submissions every time the fight hit the ground. Islam was patient. He wasn't rushing, wasn't taking unnecessary risks. He was studying, analyzing, looking for an opening. Then came the second round. Islam landed a perfect right hand that dropped Oliveira to the canvas. This wasn't just a strike with power. This was a strike with precision, timing, understanding of when the opponent is most vulnerable. Islam followed Oliveira to the ground and did what Dagestani fighters do better than anyone else in the world. He found the position, secured the grip, and slowly, methodically squeezed until Charles Oliveira, the man with the most submissions in UFC history, was forced to tap. This was symbolic. The best submission artist in UFC history was submitted. This wasn't just a physical victory. This was proof of philosophy, proof that the Dagestani system works even against the best in the world. Islam Makhachev became the new UFC lightweight champion. The emotions were overwhelming. All those years of training in the mountains, all those fights where he was introduced as Khabib's training partner, all the doubts, it all poured out in that moment. Islam didn't scream, didn't run around the octagon. He just fell to his knees and cried. These were tears of relief, tears of joy, tears of gratitude to everyone who brought him to this moment. Khabib was ecstatic. He knew how hard Islam had worked all these years. Two boys from Burshi both reached the summit of mixed martial arts. The promise made 2 years earlier was fulfilled. The first title defense came against Alexander Volkanovski on the 11th of February 2023 in Perth, Australia. Volkanovski was a phenomenon. The great was moving up from featherweight, carrying a 22-fight winning streak and a reputation as one of the most well-rounded fighters on the planet. Many believe Volkanovski would be the one to stop Islam. He was faster, had better striking, had experience in 5-round fights. For 5 rounds, Islam put on a clinic. Not the kind of dominant performance that grabs headlines, but the kind of technical excellence that impresses other fighters. He outgrappled one of the best grapplers in the sport, outstruck one of the best strikers, and showed a fight IQ that bordered on supernatural. Volkanovski couldn't find answers. Every attack was anticipated, every attempt to control the fight was neutralized. Unanimous decision victory, but more importantly, proof that Islam could perform at the highest level even when not at his physical best. He had problems with the weight cut, didn't feel 100%, but still dominated one of the best fighters on the planet. But Volkanovski wanted a rematch. He believed he could find answers. 6 months later, on the 21st of October 2023, at UFC 294 inches, Abu Dhabi, Islam gave him a rematch nobody saw coming. 3 minutes and 6 seconds into the first round, Volkanovski was unconscious on the canvas, victim of a head kick so perfectly timed it looked like it came from a video game. This was one of the most beautiful knockouts of the year. This was a different Islam Makhachev. not just a patient grappler, but a complete martial artist who could finish fights anywhere. Those who said Islam was just a wrestler were now silent. The knockout established Islam as one of the most dangerous champions in any division. But the most impressive performance was still to come. The 1st of June 2024, at UFC 302 inches Newark, New Jersey, Islam faced Dustin Poirier, former interim champion, the man who knocked out Conor McGregor twice, a fighter many considered the uncrowned king of the lightweight division. Poirier was a legend. He had fought dozens of fights at the highest level, been in wars that would break most people. His heart was unquestionable, his experience unmatched. This was supposed to be Islam's toughest test. The fight was competitive, back and forth, exactly the kind of war that reveals championship character. Poirier was landing hard shots, pressuring Islam, not letting him implement his grappling. It seemed Poirier's plan was working. 5th round, less than 3 minutes left in the fight. Islam was still ahead on the judges' scorecards, but wasn't dominating the way he was used to. And then Islam secured a Darce choke that put Poirier to sleep. 2 minutes and 42 seconds into the final frame, Islam once again snatched victory. The finish was beautiful in its technical precision, not the desperate scramble of a fighter trying to avoid defeat, but the calculated execution of someone who'd been setting up that submission throughout the fight. Islam proved something even his biggest supporters weren't sure about. He wasn't just a great grappler who could occasionally strike. He was a complete mixed martial artist who could find ways to win no matter what his opponent brought to the table. By early 2025, Islam's resume was looking historic. 3 successful title defenses tied the record for most consecutive defenses in UFC lightweight history. He was no longer just following Khabib's footsteps, he was creating his own path. Then came the 18th of January 2025 at UFC 311. The fight was supposed to be a rematch with Arman Tsarukyan, 6 years after their first war. Everyone expected an epic battle. But the day before the fight, Tsarukyan suffered a back injury and was forced to withdraw. Renato Moicano stepped in on 24 hours' notice to face the most dominant lightweight champion in UFC history. Most champions would have been thrown off by such a dramatic change. Islam treated it like a training session. 4 minutes and 5 seconds into the first round, Moicano tapped to a Bravo choke. Clean, technical, dominant. The kind of performance that makes you wonder if Islam has reached a level where the opponent simply doesn't matter. But this is where the story takes its most interesting turn. 5 months later, in May 2025, the UFC made an announcement that shocked the MMA world. Islam Makhachev was vacating the lightweight title to move up to welterweight and challenge Jack Della Maddalena for the 170-pound championship. Champion versus champion, Madison Square Garden, the 5th of November 2025. Islam on a 15-fight winning streak. He beat everyone in the lightweight division, literally everyone. His manager Ali Abdelaziz explained simply, Islam finished 9 of his last 10 opponents. He cleaned out the division. The decision was controversial. Critics accused Islam of running from Arman Tsarukyan, running from tough fights, abandoning the division that made him famous. But those who understood his mindset saw something different. This wasn't about avoiding competition. Islam proved everything he could prove at lightweight. He set the record for defenses. He dominated legends. He rewrote the record books. This was about achieving something even Khabib never accomplished, becoming a 2-division champion, proving that a fighter from Dagestan can conquer not just one weight class, but 2. The challenge ahead is enormous. Jack Della Maddalena is a different kind of problem than the lightweights Islam dominated. He's bigger, naturally stronger, with knockout power that can end fights with a single shot. His 18-fight winning streak includes elite names. He just took the title from Belal Muhammad, showing he's not just a contender, but a true champion. This is literally the definition of a super fight. 2 of the most dominant champions of their divisions will meet at Madison Square Garden, the most famous arena in the world, to determine who truly is the best fighter on the planet, pound for pound. October 2025. Less than a month until the fight. Islam Makhachev is preparing for the most important fight of his career at a training camp in Dagestan. The challenge ahead is perhaps the biggest in his life. The training camp is going full force. Abdulmanap is no longer with them. He died in 2020 from COVID complications, leaving a void that can never be filled. But his legacy lives in every movement, every technique, every strategy Islam applies. Khabib is now the head coach, the same boy from the neighboring house in Burshi who now leads his brother to history. He knows what this means for Islam, knows how much pressure is on his shoulders, knows that defeat would be devastating. But he also knows Islam is ready, that all those years of training, all those sacrifices, all that discipline led to this moment. The stakes couldn't be higher. Victory, and Islam becomes a two-division champion, achieving what Khabib couldn't, cementing himself as one of the greatest fighters of all time, perhaps even the best lightweight in MMA history. Defeat and all those talks about greatness, about surpassing Khabib, suddenly become questionable. He faces the need to work his way back to a title shot, perhaps even return to lightweight where Tsarukyan will be waiting. The 5th of November 2025, the world will find out if the Dagestani warrior can conquer another peak. From that 7-year-old boy bullied by village kids in Burshi to a champion preparing to become a two-division title holder in the biggest MMA organization in the world, Islam Makhachev's journey has been defined by quiet excellence, methodical improvement, and unshakable belief in his own abilities. His professional record is 28-1. The only loss came almost 10 years ago, from a strike that taught him more than any victory. Since then, only dominance. He holds the record for most consecutive title defenses at lightweight, most finishes in lightweight title fights. And he did all this while maintaining the humble, respectful demeanor that makes him beloved in his home region. He didn't engage in trash talk, didn't provoke opponents, didn't create artificial drama to sell fights. He just worked, won, and moved forward. The boy who once gathered courage to ask if he could train with Khabib's father has become a legend in his own right. Not as Khabib's successor, not as a copy, not as a pale imitation of greatness, but as Islam Makhachev. A fighter so complete, so dominant, that he might actually surpass the man who showed him the way. Regardless of what happens on November 5, Islam has already proven that greatness isn't just about talent or genetics. It's about consistency, about patience, about the willingness to keep improving even when you're already the best in the world. It's about getting up after a knockout and becoming stronger, about surviving an unjust accusation and proving your cleanliness through actions. About carrying the burden of comparisons to a legend and creating your own legend. The mountains of Dagestan have produced many fighters over the past decades, but few have combined skill, character, and opportunity the way Islam has. From that remote village of Burshi to the bright lights of Madison Square Garden, his journey represents everything beautiful about combat sports. There's the struggle against circumstances, overcoming difficulties, loyalty to principles, respect for opponents, love for the team. There's everything that makes sports more than just physical confrontation. In a sport obsessed with trash talk and manufactured drama, where fighters try to sell fights with insults and provocations, Islam Makhachev lets his fighting do the talking. And right now, it's saying he might be the most complete martial artist we've ever seen at lightweight. In a few weeks, he'll either confirm this by becoming a two-division champion and cementing his place in the pantheon of the greatest fighters in MMA history, or show that even legends can face new challenges, that even the most dominant champions can find an equal opponent. But if there's one thing Islam Makhachev has proven throughout his career, one constant that runs through his entire story, betting against him has always been a mistake. He's proven it again and again. When they said he was just Khabib's sparring partner, he became champion. When they said he couldn't defend the title against Volkanovski, he dominated. When they said Poirier was too experienced, he submitted him. Now they're saying Della Maddalena is too big, too strong, too dangerous. History suggests Islam will find answers again. Time will tell. Thanks for being with us. If you enjoy stories about the best fighters on the planet, their journey to success, and incredible fights, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss new episodes. Many more legends ahead.